I've wanted to talk about Kidology's videos on the black pill, looks maxing, and incels for quite some time, but it is quite the exercise in trying to craft a digestible video that respects the conclusions she makes or respects the premises that she has while showing her that she's just completely and utterly bloody wrong. Okay, so one of the most important things we need to start off with is Kidology made a video where she laments the fact that she is, to be quite frank, an incel. She laments the fact that she has been celibate for the last 7 years. It's been a minute since she has felt the warm embrace of a young man. I'm kidding. Technically, I'm not kidding. I'm making it over dramatic. Now, Kidology actually has several bad habits that explain exactly why she is an involuntary celibate. I find it interesting that she doesn't really break down that these are her faults and these are her follies. To give you good understanding, right, before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this video, Kidology is a woman. I'm going to be really sexist here and say that she's very passive. There are numerous times throughout several of her videos where she's explaining why she is an incel, where she literally talks about how she likes some young man and never says anything. I can remember about 2 instances in which this occurred. Here,
every individual, and at least since I have been celibate, it has been men. Every man that I have shown interest in has not reciprocated my feelings. But these men are always on my side, but they are never on me. They are kind, they are my friends, they are exceptional individuals, but they never want that. I think I have an issue in that I have been, I would say, in love, sort of inclined to be very invested in one individual since I was 17. And of course, in that time, I have dated, I've had relationships with other people, all of those shenanigans. But when it comes to somebody who I actually look at and think, if I were to get married, you would be the one. There is one individual in mind. And I think I also realize that the likelihood of this individual reciprocating my feelings just based on knowing them, just based on sort of our lives and where we've headed off and gone off and all of that, it would never come to that point. And that is a very far-fetched ideal to have on my part. And that is difficult, I think. That sort of stunts me very much in terms of seeking out partners, in terms of putting myself out there.
And in this instance, which just blew my mind, here.
Who's featured on my channel, Nelson. I had a huge thing for Nelson for a year. He never knew. If he watches this video, then he will know, but I did. But unfortunately, Nelson's always dated like the most stunning Instagram model-esque woman, so I had no hope.
So basically, she orbits around men that she finds attractive or that she really likes, and then never says anything about it. Never asserts herself. She just exists in their presence and hopes that that's enough, I guess, to get them to like her back. Or I'm not really even entirely sure if she understands what her game plan here is. If you literally are just going to hang around someone that you fancy to such an extent. Now, the reason why Kidology's assertion or claim to be a bit of an incel probably rubs a lot of young men the wrong way is because she's a woman. I know this sounds sexist, but let me explain. 1, young ladies have a hilarious, easy time commanding attention from an average-looking point of view to an attractive point of view. I mean, look at Brett Cooper, right? Brett Cooper, that one conservative young lady that looks like Ben Shapiro, right? Hilariously hot, all right? Hilariously attractive. She ain't really much of a deep thinker, let's be real. Like, Brett Cooper's success does not come from the fact that she's the sharpest tool in the shed. Doesn't. It comes from the fact that she's a hilariously hot tomboy that tells it like it is. That's just facts. Facts. Sorry, look, I like Brett Cooper too. Facts, okay? Women command hilariously easy attention on the internet. Because for one, the internet's saturated with a whole bunch of young men of different topics and different niches. And because of that oversaturation, being able to command their attention is, it's like swimming if you were a fish, all right? It's like being a duck in a pond, all right? You're the duck, the pond. Okay, so women are the ducks, men's the water. Men is the water. It's everywhere. And so when Kidology then comes and she suggests something pretty interesting, and that is the fact that the things that she finds attractive, are so multifaceted and just aren't reliant on looks, and that she can be attracted to a dude that just smiles at her. Don't believe me? Just watch.
I was walking today and a man cycled toward me and gave me the most incredible smile. And it was just, wow. It was an amazing thing. I think even the ugliest man could smile and it would just light up a room. Any of my preferences at all. None of them fits perfectly into my preferences in any shape or form. And I think that is what is not only scary about life, but also kind of beautiful and exciting about it. Because I never imagined that I would be physically attracted to the people whom I have gone to bed with. In my wildest dreams, I have been attracted to all manner of men.
Kidology apparently can find beauty in numerous. So if you are able to have relationships with so many different men, so many different situations, how are you still involuntarily celibate? Well, I answered earlier. It's because she doesn't assert herself in her relationships. She may very well indeed be able to find numerous different men attractive, and her preferences are as up in the air as she would conclude them to be.
I think in terms of the guys that I am attracted to, I really cannot tell you, because it just fluctuates and just goes in directions that I would not imagine in my wildest dreams.
If that be the case, then the only thing that she really needs to do is assert herself more often. That would be all she would need to do. In fact, it would be interestingly enough to me, I mean, there are plenty of young men. I remember there was one email she read where the young man wanted a virtual date with her. This is how she reacted to it.
Is one sentence that I found very, very interesting and that I'd like to elaborate on with regards to what I have been saying. An irony that I cannot help but notice is that I actually wrote an email to you a while ago, but you never replied. I wonder why. This is not a passive-aggressive judgment, but genuine curiosity. And I'd like to respond to that in this video because I thank you, Vlad, and I do remember your email. Vlad sent me an email which actually asked me out on a virtual date, and he sent a link to his website. And it was very interesting because the website is a website in which he is a coach, I believe, or a sort of guide for women and I suppose also men in terms of dating and dating advice and that sort of thing. I'm not necessarily sure precisely what it is, but I think it was because of that I actually just thought that it was a product that you wanted me, Vlad, directly to you, that you wanted to go on a date with me because of this product that you were selling, ultimately your time to customers in order to improve their dating skills. So that was why I didn't respond. So I do apologize. I did not realize that it was genuine interest.
So again, young men can reach out to Kidology and she will just discount it offhand. She won't ask for clarification to get a better understanding of where he was coming from. Instead, she will project that he was just trying to sell something. And again, so it's her passivity that is really holding her back. And I find it interesting that, well, how come no one ever pointed that out to her? I don't know. I'm not even sure if she'll watch this video, but I do think that this will be an interesting take, all right? I also think that I might need to revisit this because this is hard. I don't want this thing to be super long, but we gotta address this. So Kidology she didn't watch anything. She was responding to incels on Incel Forum that took her pictures from Instagram, created a Bumble account, and decided to attempt to show her, or to show everyone, just the obvious truth that we all understand, and that is, on online dating, women reign supreme. They are the ultimate masters. Because functionally, and Kidology does make a point of this herself, we'll get to in a moment, that online dating apps have a larger saturation of young men to young women. Now, you would think that this actually works more to her point, or it actually would work against her point of how involuntary her celibacy is. But she will go on to explain the issues here with this test and how it's all wrong and how she is still actually an incel for some reason. Let us first preface by saying something very important here. Kidology makes the cardinal sensitive person mistake, and that is being upset with the people's mean words and kind of fudging their eyes to the truth of what's being said. I'm not going to condone the guys over at the incel forum for calling her a she-boon and being mean to her. That's totally unnecessary, but a good friend of mine explained that there's a reason for it. Now, I don't believe that stewing in your rage and your anger is a good thing to do, but I do think that sometimes being able to vent yourself in a space that is where it's acceptable is perfectly fine. And that's incel.co. Now, a lot of people treat it like it's an echo chamber of just the most vile stuff, but that vile echo chamber exists as its own natural defense mechanism, if you will. Basically, they say a lot of outlandish stuff to get normies like you all rustled up so you don't come back. So basically what they're trying to do is isolate themselves so they can have their safe space to be able to vent and express themselves how they want. Now, is this the best way to communicate? I would say no, but there's also a very important thing that my friend told me, and that is this content does not exist for us normies. It exists for them. Now, unless you want to argue that it's not good to stew in that and you want to get them out of it, then there you go. There's a lot of things to be discussed there. But if your feelings are hurt because they're saying the most awful, weird things about you, you have to remember that that's the point. They don't want you there. They want you to leave. They want you offended. So being offended and missing the truth of what they're saying is not helpful or conducive to anyone. That being said, it's still a pretty bad look, but at the same time, once again, the content isn't, they're not making content for us. They're not making content for any general audience. They're venting their frustrations out to each other. It's not the best way to do it, but you have to understand that context, because otherwise you're going to get lost in the sauce and miss the fact that these people are right in some ways. And in this way, they're right. Kidology is being a bit goofy, which you will see now that we finally, after all this time, get to addressing what's actually still a small chunk of her large video. Oh boy.
I found this very interesting, especially when looking at my bio. My basics: woman, something casual, and my interests: art, writing, cricket, festivals, and pubs. Firstly, in my video, I was very clear that I don't do anything casual. So this completely misses the point. And I think when somebody says that they want something casual, that immediately infers that they want sex, that it is about sex. And when it comes to something like that, men are far more likely to have sex with a willing individual who just wants something casual. Irrespective of your race, there's no commitment, there's no long-term consequences, there's no long-term obligations. And so it isn't a high risk for men to engage in something casual. Think Ashley Madison.
Now, without spending too much time on this, there is something a bit goofy with that premise, that men are far more likely to want something casual. It might be the case that men are more likely to want something casual, but that doesn't mean that that is a reflection of men generally or as men in a majority. In fact, if you were to make yourself a pie chart and you were to find that 25% of men would want something more casual and only 18% of women are fine with something casual, technically speaking, you would conclude that there are more men more willing to have things casual than women are. That doesn't mean, though, based on the example we just presented, that that is majority of the case, and that's how majority of the people are going to be operating while on this app or just in life in general. Because the truth of the matter is, promiscuity in males is actually not reflective of the majority experience of young men. It's also something that goes beyond the scope of this video, but is definitely a topic I will have to address in the near future. However, the point here is, she is grasping at straws to make a counterpoint. The counterpoint being that this profile is inaccurate to what I would actually desire. And if we were to shift this to something else, her implication here, that is actually long-term relationships, these results will probably not be the same. I think that's what she's implying because it's the only thing she could be implying, because otherwise, this does not detract from something really obvious. And the obvious thing that was hilariously and clearly proven, that you really just can't argue about, is the fact that she has numerous people that would be fine talking to her. And she kind of just has to talk to, honestly, one of them. Anyhow, she shall continue.
There was something important that I forgot to stress just because I seem to assume it. But I think just looking at the specific dating app that was chosen by these individuals is very interesting. Bumble was described as being, and I quote, a feminist app. The idea that women would take control when it came to initiating conversation and also likes through the swiping left or right.
Bumble's existence is completely superfluous. It's an alternative to Tinder, where women are the ones that have to take more initiative. Women are more purposeful in their actions of the men that they're speaking with, and they don't have to deal with men initiating first what they don't want. You realize that when you start talking about it, this seems really stupid on the count of only people that like you from start to finish can message you in the first place. So to create an app where you have to first like the person, meaning that you would like to talk to them, and then you have to initiate contact with them, is stupid, because you would have to do that regardless if it was on Tinder or on Hinge or anywhere else. In fact, it wouldn't even matter who contacted a person first on account of the fact that you two morons liked each other. In principle to how the app should be operating. So Bumble's existence is stupid. It really is. Or, not to say that it's stupid, but it honestly doesn't solve any problem that existed. Because as it turns out, women still aren't really fond of initiating first contact with young men for this or that social reason.
And you'd assume that a dating app which is catered toward at least the stereotype of the modern feminist girl boss woman would be attracting a fair amount of women. That is, a sort of equal amount of women relative to men.
Now, there's no reason to believe that it would be attracting an equal amount. Now, it actually does have a larger female base than Tinder does, and I'm not really sure how it stacks up to Hinge. However, it did, interestingly enough, attract more women. However, what Kidology will show us is that the ratio is still a 2-to-1 ratio of men to women, meaning that women still have an abundance of options relative to the young men that are there. So when you all start factoring things together, it still doesn't really make any sense technically that women would want to start using online dating for a very important reason. And that is because women don't necessarily, honestly a lot of the time, need it. Because they can find a lot of their relationships by just walking around, or going to different hotspot areas, or by interacting with just people wherever they see. Or they can just honestly have men just approach them and just start their relationships there. Like, women have a much easier time starting relationships and starting friendships because people have a very low risk, or most people don't. Most people are very fond of women just in general. Women are fond of women and men are fond of women. Of course, as far as like initial social interactions are concerned, if you want to start talking about how women hate each other, it goes beyond the scope of this video. Point is, women have an easier time in general being able to find relationships, and thus they don't need to go to online dating apps. Typically, if a woman does go to an online dating app, I'm going to be honest with you, that is oftentimes a signal that she's probably not top shelf, either in mentality or in physicality. Which sucks to say and would have to take a lot of like defending as a conclusion, but that goes beyond the scope of this video. Anyhow, it does not stand to reason that at any point in time, women and men are going to be on any online dating app at an equal firm. Because in reality, no matter where you slice it, most women don't view most men as attractive people from start to finish. Online dating app can reflect this a lot easier because it's a lot of data, but a lot of young men are going to online dating apps because they can't find a lot of women that are in their immediate area, co-workers, friends in college, or anything. They're going to those apps and hire droves because a lot of the women don't want them from start to finish. Anyway, continue.
The percentage of men relative to women is 67.4% to 32.6%. So there are over double the number of men on Bumble, a feminist app which is catered toward women and seemingly empowering women, compared to the app's target demographic. So when we look at my own anecdotal experience with this fake dating profile, it is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy and obvious that I am going to get responses.
Exactly.
This fake dating app was created by individuals on a forum which caters to black pill men and to men predominantly looking to looks max. I can assume quite confidently that this app was created by a man or men. Therefore, they actually had the best of both worlds once again. That black pillars do like, I have noticed. They posed as me, a woman, and yet they were able to, as a consequence of stealing my identity, able to present themselves through a very masculine way. That is, being able to utilize the fact that women have to initiate first contact in the way that they, as men, pretending to be me, would do and would prefer to do, at least going on the conventional way that things are done in the dating world.
Now, I'm honestly not even sure that Kidology knows how Bumble works because this point is actually irrelevant. Bumble's initial liking process works exactly the same as Tinder, meaning that you don't actually have to like someone first to get them to like you back. There's still a catalog of people that have liked you that you may not have discovered yet at all. You just have to match. That's all you have to do. From that matching point, then you can respond first. What we have concluded here is that Kidology has numerous people that she could numerous people she could message first. They've already been matched. It's already been selected. That's it. That's what that means. So using that, this point actually just doesn't make any sense. They're not using the best of both worlds here. It's irrelevant as to whether who can match first. I think maybe at best you could argue, I don't even know if it would make any sense to argue that the problem is the fact that they use Bumble and rather than like Tinder or Hinge.
So I can assume that they approach this from the way that men approach dating apps. It is about quantity over quality. It is about getting as many likes out as possible in order to get at least a handful or a couple of likes. So I assume that the reason I got so many responses back and so many matches is because these individuals sent out numerous likes to pretty much anybody.
Now, this is an obfuscation from the main point, which she has to do because she can actually have a good counter argument to this. For one, this is a gigantic assumption that these dudes literally just sat there and just swiped on everyone and weren't selective on who they wanted to pick. Because, ironically, when these tests have been conducted numerous different times, I have seen these young men be selective about the men that they want, or the men that they want to match with a young woman. The results do not change at all. Being really picky and selective as a young lady doesn't. In fact, it's entirely like their issue, because if they weren't and they had lower expectations and were more accepting of, like, I guess some frivolous nonsense here and there, they're still going to have a lot of unmatched people that are just waiting in their catalog. Like people that like them that they haven't seen yet or probably will never see. So you can see literally these analytics if you pay for like a premium membership. You can still find that you don't have to match at all to see lots of people like you. So I think Kidology doesn't know how these apps work in their function, because this point is irrelevant. It really doesn't matter if the young men were indiscriminately swiping. Other young men still were swiping on the you profile.
On even my anecdotal experience with men, there are a lot of men in my life who I know would and have said that they would happily sleep with me, but they wouldn't be in a relationship with me. And I think this is one of the issues with incels as well, especially insofar as the responses to my particular fake dating profile were concerned. Incels want the best of both worlds, and both the worlds which they want don't actually exist. They want, on the one hand, a woman men who they can be in a relationship with, who they can love, who they can cuddle on the couch, as is represented on Incel Wiki. Yet, on the other hand, they reduce relationships and intimacy to sex.
Now, first, this is hilariously uncharitable for two reasons. One, it suggests that all incels are a monolith and they all feel the same exact way. And that some incels don't do this reduction to just sex, and other incels aren't people that want the full package of a relationship, someone to relate to and have sex with. But that's just number one. It's just an uncharitable take that these people aren't of different mindsets. But for two, it also creates a bit of a false dichotomy to suggest that these ideas are somehow mutually exclusive. Sexual relationships' main definitive factor in what makes them what they are is the fact that you have sex. By definition, that's a pretty important, significant, if I dare not say the most important, distinguishing factor between a friendship and a relationship is having sex. The main crux of that transition is the sexual attraction that very many young ladies say the reason why they friend-zone bruh is because they don't find him sexually attractive. They've just analyzed something pretty obvious, and it kind of sucks that they have to be so hypercritical in analyzing something that's so obvious, and that is the lack of sex and sexuality enters a lack of close, intimate relationships. Because you can only get so far with just being friends with a woman. You have to have that sexual attraction to complete the cycle, or to have two halves of the whole that is a relationship with a woman. That being her friend can only get you so far as intimacy is concerned. It's not a reduction, but an observation of cold hard reality. You can't really split the difference between the two. In order to be on the couch where you're cuddling with that woman, you have to be sexually attractive to her. That's what incels are recognizing. To sit here and pretend that they're not just right about this is silly. Really silly. Now, like I said, man, it's tough to respond to Kidology's video because there's a lot of cutting I have to do, and there's a lot of fluff that just honestly just needs to be ripped out of it, right? So, in conclusion to this video, what Kidology decided to do is, instead of contend with the information here and actually research how these apps work, she tries her best to discount this as anything reasonable or anything that proves that she's not actually an incel by saying, one, she's not into casual sex. Two, she doesn't operate like a young man would operate. She's very selective of the men that she has to pick because sex is dangerous for her. I cut a little bit of that out. So let's just to be a bit more charitable. Here you go.
Is so important to women. And I would say just personally, for me, if I am going to sleep with somebody, I need to know that I'm going to be safe with them, because objectively speaking, and yes, I know that specifically speaking, the vast majority of men in this world are not going to cause me any harm. But objectively speaking, a man is a lot stronger than me.
The reason why I avoided talking about this was because I was just going to make the salty head-ass statement that, yeah, young women seem to put themselves in dangerous positions all the time with attractive men. So, tabling that discussion, let's just say we accepted a whole bloody sale. She's trying to discount these findings as she probably wouldn't have picked these men anyway because she would be more picky or selective, which ironically spits in the face to the other points she would have been making, but again, that's more an implication than direct statements. The point that's being made here is she's trying her best to discount these findings as legitimate counterpoints to the fact that she can't find someone to date, when in all actuality, she hasn't done that at all, because there is an elephant in the room that has to be addressed, a gigantic elephant, and that is Kidology never needed to have someone else make an online dating profile for her. She could have just made the profile. She could literally just make a new profile now, make it how she actually wants it, and still probably find herself getting men who would probably be more targeted to the long-term relationships that she's asking for. If she wants to split the difference on the fact that men want to have casual sex and thus don't actually want to date her, fine, you can do that. But you would be pretending so hard that men only ever, and there are no men that want to have relationships with her. You would have to be delusional to believe that as a young lady. And that, more than anything else, is what this is trying to show. Again, Kidology could honestly just make a profile where she says she wants a long-term relationship. She can make it correctly, and she could find many a man that want that. Why isn't she doing it? Well, tune in for the next video where we address exactly why Kidology is not fond of online dating apps. So with that being said, I hope you guys got something out today's video, and if you did, go ahead and click the like button. Yeah, shoot, go and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below, and as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.